For decades, the Arctic was seen as neutral ground, frozen, remote, untouchable, a place beyond politics, beyond power struggles, beyond conflict. That idea is now dead. The Arctic is no longer neutral. What is happening in the far north is not an isolated development, and it is not about a single country, a single leader, or a single statement. It is about a fundamental shift in how global power is structured in the 21st century. As Arctic ice melts, geography changes. And when geography changes, power follows. New shipping routes are opening, routes that can bypass traditional choke points like the Suez Canal. Distances between continents are shrinking. Resources that were once locked beneath ice are becoming accessible. This is not a future scenario. This is happening now. And the world's major powers are moving faster than most people realize. The Arctic has quietly transformed from a buffer zone into a strategic arena. Greenland sits at the center of this transformation, not because of its population, not because of its economy, but because of its position. Greenland connects North America to Europe. It overlooks the Arctic Ocean and controls access between the Atlantic and the polar routes. From a military perspective, it is one of the most valuable pieces of territory on the planet. The United States already operates critical early warning and missile defense systems there. These systems are designed to detect threats across the Northern Hemisphere. They are not symbolic. They are operational. This is why recent statements about Greenland should not be dismissed as rhetoric. They are signals. Signals that the rules of neutrality in the Arctic no longer apply. Russia understands this reality better than most. Over the past decade, Moscow has dramatically expanded its Arctic presence. Old military bases have been reactivated. New airfields, radar stations, and missile systems have been deployed along Russia's northern coast. For Russia, the Arctic is not a distant frontier. It is a core strategic priority. It provides defense depth. It protects access to energy resources. And it allows Russia to project power into regions that were once inaccessible. China sees the Arctic differently, but no less strategically. Despite having no Arctic coastline, China has declared itself a near-Arctic state. This is not symbolic language. It reflects long-term intent. Beijing has invested in Arctic research, infrastructure, and shipping initiatives under the framework of the so-called Polar Silk Road. The goal is clear: reduce dependence on traditional maritime routes and secure strategic flexibility in a warming world. In a global system where supply chains are increasingly weaponized, alternative routes become leverage. This places the United States in a difficult position. For decades, American global influence was built on control of oceans, alliances, and trade corridors. But the Arctic was never fully integrated into that system. Now it must be, and the window to act is narrowing. Greenland becomes critical not because it offers immediate dominance, but because it offers long-term positioning. Whoever secures influence in the Arctic today shapes the balance of power for decades to come. This is what makes the situation unstable. The Arctic lacks a comprehensive security framework. There is no equivalent of NATO governing the region, no clearly defined red lines, no shared understanding of limits. This creates an environment where miscalculation becomes more likely. Infrastructure projects can be interpreted as military escalation. Defensive systems can be perceived as offensive threats. Silence can be mistaken for weakness. For Europe, this raises serious concerns. For Canada, it challenges assumptions about sovereignty. For smaller Arctic communities, it introduces existential questions about control and autonomy. And for the global system as a whole, it marks the end of an era. The Arctic is no longer a neutral space governed by distance and ice. It is becoming a zone of competition shaped by access, surveillance, and strategic positioning. This shift will not be announced with a single dramatic event. It will unfold quietly, through investments, through bases, through logistics, through language. And by the time the world fully understands what has changed, the balance may already be set. The Arctic is no longer neutral. And what happens there will shape not just the future of regional politics, but the structure of global power itself. This isn't about Greenland. It's about who controls the Arctic next. Everyone thinks this story is about Greenland. It isn't. Greenland is not the objective. Greenland is the opening move. What we are witnessing right now is not a sudden political statement or a momentary controversy. It is the early stage of a structural shift in global power, one that is unfolding quietly, deliberately, in preparation. For Europe, this raises uncomfortable questions. For Canada, it challenges long held assumptions about sovereignty. For smaller Arctic communities, it introduces existential concerns about autonomy and control. And for the United States, it represents a strategic test, a test of whether global leadership can be maintained in a world where influence is exercised quietly rather than through force. This is not a traditional arms race. It is a race for positioning, bases, ports, data, surveillance, shipping routes. Each decision builds on the last, gradually reshaping the balance of power. History shows that major geopolitical shifts rarely announce themselves clearly. They unfold slowly, beneath the surface, until a tipping point is reached. By the time the world recognizes the change, it is often too late to reverse it. The Arctic may not be the site of the next major conflict, but it could determine who holds leverage when conflicts erupt elsewhere. That is why Greenland matters, not as a prize to be claimed, but as a signal of intent, a signal that geography is once again shaping global power, that climate change is accelerating strategic competition, and that the next phase of global rivalry will be defined less by headlines and more by quiet, irreversible moves. This is not a short-term story. It is a long-term warning. Greenland is not the destination. It is the preview. And the Arctic is no longer a frozen frontier at the edge of the world. It is becoming the arena where the future balance of power will be decided, quietly, strategically, and long before most people realize what is happening.